Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we'll be exploring a fundamental web development technique, CSS tooltips. Tooltips are those informative elements that appear when you hover over specific elements. While JavaScript offers tooltip functionalities, we'll be discussing how to achieve this purely with CSS. So, without further ado, let's get started. So we're in VS Code and I have a basic HTML structure with an empty body element and some styles for HTML and body elements such as height 100% and positioning all the elements in the center, as well as disabling the default margin for the body element. And we'll start with the span element with some text inside. This element will act as a container for both the text itself and the tooltip element. To define the actual tooltip content, we'll leverage HTML data attributes. This approach allows us for dynamic tooltip text without requiring additional CSS rules for each instance. To define a tooltip text, we'll add a data text attribute and pass down the tooltip text itself. Now let's move to CSS. We'll define style for both the tooltip container, our span element, and the tooltip content itself. But first, let's attach a class for our tooltip container. And in the style CSS file, we define tooltip class, and for now, we just position it to relative and add some dashed border to make it look like as a hover indicator. Border bottom, 1 pixel, dashed, and the black color. We can also optionally add a cursor pointer when you hover over the tooltip text. Now let's define the styles for the tooltip element. And for this, we will use a tooltip before pseudo-element. And inside the content property, we will use attribute function and pass down the data text attribute. And now you immediately see that the tooltip text is appeared before our span element. Now let's style it a little bit. So we'll use position absolute relative to our span container. Define top 50%, left 100%, transform, translate y-axis minus 50%, hit save, and let's use width to max with max content. Or we could use white space no wrap. Now we can define a background color. Let's use a gray color. A text color to white. Add some padding. A border radius. And a little bit of margin from the left side. So we've just positioned our tooltip to the right, but you can add your custom classes to position it in the bottom, left or top position, depending on your preference. For the demonstration, I will add a left class here, and let's define a custom left class to customize the position for the tooltip. And here we just need to reset the left position to initial, set right to 100%. Oops, sorry, we need to apply those styles for the tooltip, not the span element. Yes, like that. Reset the margin left and apply a margin right to 1 rem. And this is just an example how to position your tooltip depending on your needs. For my taste, I would like to position it to the right. So let's remove the left class. Let's collapse this. And now we will enhance the user experience by adding a little triangle here on the left side of the tooltip. And for this, we will use another pseudo-element, after element, and a border trig to create triangles. So let's define tooltip after. Now we need just an empty content property. Position it absolute, left 100%, top to 50%, transform. Translate white, negative 50%, and here's the trick. Border style, solid, border width 1.5 rem, and border color transparent, gray color, transparent, and again transparent. And actually I've misspelled. We need border width, like that, save, and we're almost there. Let's just move it a little bit to the right with a negative margin left to 0.25 rems. What if I set 2 pixels? What if 1? Yes, 1 pixel works perfectly. But the actual tooltip functionality involves revealing tooltip when you hover over the element. So we need to hide the tooltip and show it when you hover over the element. So let's hide it by default first, by defining display none on the before element, and the same for the after element, our triangle. And to reveal it in hover, tooltip hover before display block and tooltip hover after display block. Let's try it. And yes, it works. And what if I want a smooth fade in and fade out transitions? We could add an opacity transition with the opacity and transition properties. So let's try it. So I define the opacity 0 on the triangle and opacity 0 on the tooltip container itself. And we need to define a transition property and set it to 0.3 seconds for the opacity property. And the same for the initial state for the triangle. And on hover state, we set opacity to 1. Hit save, and as you see, it doesn't work, because actually you cannot transition opacity property while switching between display none and display block. In order to make it work, we need to use keyframes and define the transition with the CSS keyframes animation. So let's define the first transition. Keyframes, tooltip, fade in, and here we will transition from opacity 0 to opacity 1. And here also we need to define a display and set it to block. So the CSS animation will set a display to block while performing this animation. And let's define another keyframes, tooltip, fade out. But we will define from opacity 1 to opacity 0. Now we need to attach those keyframe animations to our elements. We can remove the transition property here and here as well. And now we need to attach the animation to our tooltip container and the triangle itself. For the initial state, it will be an animation property set to tooltip fade out and the duration to 0.3 seconds. The same for the triangle. And on hover, we also define an animation and set it to tooltip fade in with a duration 0.3 seconds. And that's it. Let's try to hover over the span element. And as you see, it works perfectly. So we've just created a tooltip with no JavaScript involved in our functionality. And you can customize your tooltip tags here to any text you want. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me to stay motivated in the long run. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.